Hey guys, Spudknocker here, as always, and we're back in the cockpit of the venerable F-14A Tomcat, about to take off for event number 6 of the upcoming Zone 5 campaign for DCS World from Reflected Simulations, built in conjunction with former Top Gun instructor and F-14 Rio Dave Baranek, the author behind the fantastic book Top Gun Days. If you're at all interested in naval aviation, the F-14 Tomcat, F-18 Hornet, or 1980s nostalgia, definitely check out Top Gun Days. It is a fantastic read that I would recommend to anyone interested in these topics. Now, Zone 5 is an attempt to bring that classic Top Gun experience to DCS World now that we have the F-14A Tomcat within the existing framework of DCS World as we have it here in early 2021. Now, it is a very cool campaign. As we can see, there are a lot of kind of period set pieces that are in the campaign. You can see some Shamrock's F-4S Phantom 2s taxiing out to the runway, a custom skin for the F-4E Phantom that is in DCS World as an AI unit. And so the storyline of this campaign goes as such. It was 1987, and at this point the US Navy is looking to integrate the F-16A Fighting Falcon into the cadre of aggressor aircraft at both NAS Fallon and NAS Miramar. Keep in mind, NAS Miramar is still an NAS, not an MCAS, as it would become in 1995. And so, as a result, there was a quick and dirty exercise put together in order to actually evaluate the F-16 and how to actually get it integrated as an aggressor into the Navy's force structure. So, the Navy decided to take a bunch of its best pilots from the squadrons at NAS Miramar and throw them into an exercise against these new F-16s. And unfortunately, there was an issue at NAS Miramar. There was some sort of issue with the runway, whatnot, but that base is unfortunately closed down for flight ops for the next 2 weeks. So as a result, we had to kind of pack up the whole show and take it on the road up here to Nellis Air Force Base. Thankfully, our Air Force brethren gave us a spot on the ramp here after some scrapping and begging, and we're going to go ahead and fly these exercises here in the Nevada Range Complex. So we've already got our leader over here off to our right started up. We can hear that awesome whine of his craptastic TF-30 engines. And we can see a very good shot of the custom skins from the fictional squadrons that are actually represented here in this campaign. So we'll go ahead and get our jet started up and we'll get going with this exercise. This event here, event number 6, is a to the unknown situation where we're escorting a fictional strike package that's going to be attacking targets further north of us on the range, and it's our job to protect that imaginary strike package. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get the Huffer connected and we'll get going.
Chief, turn on the ground power. Copy. Connect ground near supply. Copy. Ground power is now.
Roger.
Ground air supply is now connected.
ICS comm check. Roger that.
So we're flying as Sniper 3 today, and we're actually flying off of the wing of Sniper 4 off to our right-hand side here, which can be a little bit confusing on the comms, but we'll make it work.
Ejection seat. Closing canopy. Check.
Got our ejection seat armed. Here comes the canopy.
Ready to start.
Fantastic. Okay, let's go ahead and get ourselves started up. We'll go ahead and crank the right-hand engine first. And we'll get to work with getting the various systems of our aircraft started up. We're also going to make sure we get our navigational lights and anti-collision lights on and turned on because we are flying through the national airspace system here in the United States. We're not just flying off of a carrier out in the middle of nowhere. We actually have to abide by the rules of flying in the airspace around Nellis Air Force Base and Las Vegas as a whole. So we'll go ahead and switch up to Nellis ground on button 3. Alright, we got engine 1 cranked. We'll go ahead and start our left-hand engine now. And as we get that, we'll be getting different things in the cockpit as we wait for that engine to be ready to go. This campaign does a fantastic, fantastic job of not just showing the very, very, you know, interesting and entertaining parts of flying, which is, of course, shooting missiles and blowing stuff up, but also the very dull and almost boring parts of flying that a lot of people aren't exposed to in DCS world if you haven't actually gone through flight school or learned to fly an airplane in real life. And that is a lot of things like such as flying departure procedures and stars on coming back for arrival to the airport, things like that. So fortunately for this mission, we don't have to worry too much about the DP since we're flying number 2. That's more on the shoulders of our wingman over there. However, we definitely want to be cognizant and aware of what we're supposed to be doing throughout this departure procedure in case we get separated from our wingman. Or our leader, I should say. So we'll go ahead and pin this page, and this page. So we're flying the Dream 2 departure procedure. So we're going to be taking off from runway 3 right. So we're going to fly runway heading, intercept the LSV TACAN 028 radial direct to Harem.
Okay.
And so we'll go ahead and put in a TACAN for LSV. LSV TACAN is going to be 12 X-ray. So we'll go ahead and come down here and we'll go transmit receive on 012 on X-ray. We're good there. So we'll go ahead and actually pull up our... We'll pull up... There we go. We'll pull that up and we'll go ahead and actually put in the radial of our departure procedure. It's going to be a 028 radial that we're going to be intercepting. We don't quite have a reception from it yet, and that's no problem. That'll be coming up later. So we'll go ahead and go back to our INS for our HSD down there. And go ahead and bring the stick back. We can have that back for now. And so we'll just be able and ready to fly this route just in case for whatever reason we get separated from our leader. And then we'll have our Rio in the backseat if this were flying a real departure procedure. He would be on the 344 radial, so that way we can intercept that radial when we cross Juno. And we're going to cross Juno at or above 17,000 and then via assigned route. So that'll be resume own navigation once we pass over the top of Juno. And we can see the different points here, Juno at waypoint 1, Ramp waypoint 2, Moose fixed point, and we can see we'll be following that all the way through our entrance into gate 4 up on top, the northern section of the NTTR itself. That's where we'll actually be doing the actual aerial engagement. And then on the way back, we'll be flying a star on the way back, and of course our leader will be leading us through that as well. So it's a very, very fun and interesting way to actually fly here in DCS World. It's something a lot of players are going to be... It's going to be new to a lot of players, that's for sure. But there is some fantastic documentation of how to actually fly these procedures that are included with the campaign as well. And you guys will be introduced to it nice and slowly as you fly through the initial missions of the campaign itself. Dave Baranek, he actually includes a lot of voiceovers, and he'll be giving us a briefing once we're up in the air and on our way out to the range. He'll give us a briefing as to what this exercise will actually be covering. And we're going to go ahead down here to rounds, and we'll increase our round count up to 670. Now, the eagle-eyed among you that know the F-14 in and out know that the F-14 actually carries 675 rounds. However, it doesn't count down that precisely, so we're going to go for 670 and have a 5-round difference in there. It's a little bit of a cushion to show our round count. So we'll go ahead and bring our wings forward manually. We'll reset the KDEC, and that should bring our wings back to 68 degrees on automatic, and then we'll bring it back up to 20 degrees on automatic for our taxi. And we'll go ahead and bring our anti-skid down to spoiler and brake. That'll help us out a little bit if we need to slam on the brakes, get a little bit of aero braking from our spoilers as well. We'll increase our ICS, TACAN, and Sidewinder volume a little bit. I always like to increase my radio volumes by quite a bit in both DCS and in real life. I tend to be a little bit deaf on the radios, I suppose. So we are ready for taxi. So we're going to go ahead and hit the space bar, and that will start up a radio procedure. We tell our lead we're ready to go, and we'll start our taxi on out to the 03 runways.
4 flight, radio check. Sniper 3. Nellis ground, Sniper 4 flight, ready to taxi with Foxtrot. Sniper 4, Nellis ground, taxi Foxtrot Alpha, cross runway 03 left, hold short 03 right. Taxi Foxtrot Alpha, cross 03 left, hold short 03 right, Sniper 4. Sniper 4, rolling.
And I, of course, forgot to change the bleed air settings and turn on my oxygen. That is something that I tend to forget a lot in the F-14, but that's why in real life we always fly with checklists.
Takeoff checklist, brakes. Check OK, accumulator pressure up.
And we're doing the takeoff checklist via the spacebar with our Rio in the back seat, via actual voiceovers that are recorded for the campaign itself.
Normal feed, auto transfer, dump off, feed tanks full. Bingo set. Canopy down, lights out. Lights out up here. Seat arms, top and bottom, command eject aft. I'm armed, top and bottom, showing MCO in the window. Stab. All on. All circuit breakers set. All mine are set. Off. By die. Normal. Compass. Compass synced. Standby gyro is erect. Wings. 20 degrees, auto, both lights out. Flaps and slats. Up. Spoilers and anti-skid. Spoiler module on, spoiler brake selected. Trim. Set 0, 0, 0. Harness locked. Lights locked. Controls. I'll get it on the runway. All warning and caution lights out. Fighter out. Sniper 4, hold the short runway. Ready to go. 3 right for departure, flight at 2. Sniper 4, Nellis Tower, wind is 190 and 10. Cleared for takeoff, runway 03 right. Cleared for takeoff, 03 right, Sniper 4.
And we'll be ready to contact approach as well out on takeoff here as we get handed off to fly the departure procedure. Of course, we'll be flying number 2 here, so it'll make it a little bit easier on us so we don't have to keep track of so many things. The AI can definitely be a little bit more tricky to fly in formation with than a good old-fashioned human player, but we'll do the best we possibly can here. Now, one of the reasons why the AI is a little bit harder to fly in formation with than a human player is the AI has very hard-coded levels of acceleration and turn rate, and so a lot of times as a human player in your highly modeled F-14, you can't keep up with the AI modeled F-14, so we're going to try our absolute best here to keep up with him. So he should be at about 250 knots, and we're going a bit faster to try and catch up with him. We'll go ahead and turn on the aircraft labels just so that way we can see things a little bit better. And we're going to switch over to departure.
Sniper check. 3. Now departure, Sniper 4 flight with you, northward. Sniper 4, Nellis departure, radar identified, climb to 7,000, maintain 250 knots, follow heading 344 over truck stop, then resume on navigation. Climb to 7,000, maintain
So truck stop is a location along this highway here in which we're going to turn left towards Juneau to continue through the departure procedure. And then we'll resume own navigation once we get over the top of Juneau itself. We're coming up on our wingman here, so we're going to have to start reducing our power setting. Maybe pop out those speed brakes a little bit. I keep saying wingman, I mean keep meaning to say leader.
Okay, we have a friendly 035, 75 miles, Angels 8.
And there's no reason to fly super tight on him. The tighter we sit on his wing, the more throttle adjustments we're going to have to make, and thus the more fuel we're going to use in comparison to our leader. And you can see the AI starting to increase its rate of climb. And there he goes. See, pretty quick and snappy turn there. And we're going around the outside, and now we're on our way direct to Juneau. So you'll definitely be using a lot of the documentation that's included with this campaign quite a bit. You'll see me reference it quite a bit as we fly through this on our way up to gate number 4 into the NTTR. And it's important to note that the F-14A, with its TF-30s, does not accelerate very well in full mil. You can cruise pretty darn well up at altitude at full mil, but in terms of gaining speed, such as to catch up with your leader here, it's definitely not quite as effective as those good old F-110s.
Another 2 versus unknown, but don't expect a rerun. We've added several challenges. And for this and future missions, the wild card may or may not pop up anytime after the fight's on. So keep up your defensive lookout. You can probably tell me the admin procedures, but I'll cover them briefly. You fly the Dream 2 departure via the Elgin corridor, enter the range at Gate 4, check in with Blackjack and Showtime, and proceed to Point India at 23,000 feet. When your section is ready, make the radio call ready. Showtime will be monitoring bandits and fighters, and will call fights on when everyone is ready. Today's bandits will be a mix of F-5s and F-16s, and they're simulating the Mirage F-1 and Mirage 2000 respectively. Intel reports the F-1s have all-aspect IR missiles, while the 2000s have all-aspect IR and radar missiles. I think the enemy logistics officer will be fired soon, or maybe executed. They're running low on Super 530 missiles, and put them only on the Mirage 2000. Your Tomcats will have 3 AIM-7s, 3 AIM-9s, and the gun. Your mission today is escort, and you have a kneeboard card with the details. For this flight, you're detached escort with an imaginary strike group roughly 8 miles north of you. Escort is one of the most challenging fighter missions. You are the last line of defense for the strikers. You should evaluate whether hostile contacts are a threat to the strikers. This will require discipline as you decide to commit. For this mission, you will be required once again to visually identify the contact as hostile, or VID. That is, confirm it is either an F-16 or F-5. You are escorting the strikers, and there may be friendly aircraft in the airspace ahead of you. Once you have a VID as hostile, all contacts in that group are
There's
hostile.
a friendly 010, 59 miles, Angels
bandits
20.
have forward quarter missiles. If you observe a missile launch from the bandits, you have to evaluate the threat and decide whether you can avoid the missile or need to use the last-ditch defensive tactics we've discussed in the lectures. Brake turn with chaff and flares, maneuver to put the missile in the beam, and further maneuvers.
Copy.
Once you've
Switching
defeated an
to
enemy
tier point
missile,
2.
you must decide whether you can continue your mission or should abort. With all of these new considerations, don't lose track of the lessons you've learned on previous flights. The basics will always be important. Proper formation, disciplined lookout, clear and brief comms. As always, If you need information from AWACS, use the DCS radio menu, and remember, request bogey dope will get you a vector to the nearest group, while request picture will get you bullseye calls. Bullseye is point India. If you get into an engagement, keep up that lookout and inter-cockpit comms, and maintain your energy so you have options to kill, to switch bandits, or to disengage if you have to. I look forward to seeing you on the range.
All right, so there's Dave's awesome briefing for us for this mission. As he said,
Let's review the training rules. We need 5 miles visibility and 15,000 feet between cloud layers. Hard deck is 500 feet. Soft deck is 5,000 feet. There's no slow speed, high AOA maneuvering below the soft deck. Of note, these numbers are for the game. Decks in actual flying are higher.
There is a friendly.
You need to
12
perform
o'clock,
a G-awareness
9
maneuver
miles.
before starting ACM. All aircraft need operable UHF and ICS of 2-seaters and must monitor guard. Nordo aircraft, rock your wings and proceed to Coyote B, orbit at 15,000 feet. If no one joins on you, follow the Nordo recovery procedures in the in-flight guide. Remember, monitor showtime and blackjack frequencies while on the range. There's a 500-foot bubble around all aircraft. 9,000 feet is the minimum for head-on aim 9 shots. There's a 1,000-foot minimum for guns and no head-on gun shots. Head-on, pass left to left, but don't cross flight path to get there. Nose high aircraft goes high. Upsun aircraft is responsible for collision avoidance. Offensive aircraft monitor the altitude of defensive aircraft. Don't make blind lead turns. Echo all knock it off calls.
Yep,
If
switching
someone's
to
approaching
fixed
guns
point.
on you, don't dispense flares. An additional note, monitor your fuel closely, and remember we have 2 tankers on station if you get low on fuel. The details are on your kneeboard cards. There's no need to push the limits. Now, take a minute to go through the stall spin procedures for your aircraft.
all right, so we're ready to go in terms of getting to our destination to get set up for the engagement itself. We're nice and saddled up on our wingman here, our leader, that is, and we'll go ahead and keep working our navigational systems here. The NTTR seems to have gone through a little bit of a graphical update in one of the latest updates to DCS World, and the ground does look really, really nice from way high up. It certainly looks like flying over the desert wastelands east of Los Angeles, around the Las Vegas area, and east of San Diego area. It's really, really pretty to see in the game. And of course, the F-14A Tomcat is just looking as gorgeous as ever, even with these very cool custom skins made by Reflected for this campaign. So it's really, really important with this campaign to make sure that you have a game plan when it comes to engaging in these engagements, because, you know, there's a lot of flying that you got to do. It really brings you through the boring parts of flying in order to get to those engagements. So if you lose the engagement, you have to fly the mission over again. It can be a little bit frustrating. So you really want to have a solid game plan. You really want to fly conservatively, and you really want to fly realistically, rather than being the full balls to the walls DCS World kind of pilot. You want to fly as realistically as possible to make sure that you survive these engagements.
We're approaching the range. Let's do the G-warm.
Alright, I'm going to go ahead and do a G-warm here. And this is something that you do before you fly aerobatics in any kind of aircraft, whether it's an F-14 or a Pit Special. So let's go ahead and push up the throttle and do a quick 90-degree right-hand turn. It is something that I do for every time I'm going to fly any kind of aerobatics. as your G tolerance changes from day to day. Even if you are a super awesome 1980s F-14 pilot, if you maybe had something different for lunch that day, maybe you didn't eat before, or you're a little dehydrated, or maybe you've been drinking plenty of fluids or whatever, lots of different biological factors can play into how much G tolerance you have for that day. So we'll go ahead and hit the spacebar and let them know that we are ready to go. And then our leader out here will do his G-warm maneuver. And he's going to turn right back into us. And we'll form back up again. We've got 19 miles to get to our next navigational point. And for reducing confusion with the characters' names in this simulation, or this campaign, rather, our Rio's call sign is actually Jester, just like the AI is, so that can reduce some confusion as to which Rio is talking at what times. And we'll try and form back up on our leader here, out passing him hopefully. Yeah, I mean, flying aerobatics or flying in a dogfight, which is just applied aerobatics, you know, it's an athletic event, so, you know, different athletes have good days and bad days, so that G-warm maneuver is definitely important to kind of gauge your tolerance for Gs for that day, and kind of get yourself warmed up for it, just like you would throw a few pitches before you jump into a game if you were a pitcher or something like that. You got to get yourself nice and warmed up for the athletic event and ordeal ahead.
We've got a friendly. 11 o'clock, 13 miles.
So that's probably one of those tankers that Jester's seen out in front of us. Hopefully, we've been pretty conservative on our fuel. Looks like we've got 11.3 left on the gauge. You'll also notice that you will not be flying with any external tanks in these missions. It's simply because if you got into a real dogfight against real enemy MiGs, you'd probably want to punch those fuel tanks off, and we don't want to be raining fuel tanks down all the way across northern Nevada. So, just leave them off for now. Whoop. And see, there you go. That's kind of one of those things about flying with the AI that is a little bit tricky, because they tend to kind of sneak up on you with these turns. Check our navigation. Next stop is Bighorn, so we're going to switch over to the IP.
Okay, there's a friendly, 310, 47 miles. Angels 24.
Sidewinder tone. Radio and ITS volumes. Roll fast. Alpha computer circuit breaker in. Fuel switches. Auto, normal, bug out 6. Weapon select. Set. ACM guard. Up. Gun rate. High. Sidewinder coolant. On. Missile prep. On. Missile mode. Normal. Map your arm. On. PDCP. Air to air. Mills. 153. G-suit. Checked. Seat and rudder pedals. Adjusted. Lap belts. Secure. Loose gear. Stowed. Sniper 3, fence in.
And our wingman's doing his checks. Alright, lead's good to go. So we are going to be looking for a wild card that's going to pop out and try to engage us from an unexpected direction here. At which point we'll turn to engage them and then call them off, and he will break off and disengage, and then we can engage the large group of aircraft that's going to be out here hunting for us and hunting for our strike package. This is going to be in order to make sure that pilots are keeping their situational awareness up and not getting target fixation on the large guerrilla group that's going to pop up out in front of them. That's very important to make sure that you're always scanning all the way around you, just to make sure that you don't get in trouble that way. Got a little behind myself with the navigation, so we're going to go ahead and make sure we are on IP and headed out towards Bighorn.
Roger. Switching to initial point.
Alright, coming up on gate 4 here. And then we'll swap over our navigation to India. India is surface target.
Approaching Blackjack. Push button 14. 2.
Roger that.
And we'll put that on the ARC 182 in the back seat.
3.
And that way we're free to tune frequencies in the front seat on our 159.
Sniper 4, Blackjack, radar contact. You are cleared at gate 4. Your discretion. Altimeter 2930. Requesting squawk mode 3 tactical. Stand by for word.
Sniper 4, Loco 2930.
Alright, we'll set our altimeter setting.
Alpha, Outlaw 43 flight, X-Frag. All control in the clear. How copy?
Sniper 4, copy all.
And we're going to also squawk tactical on our transponder, so that way ATC in the area knows what we're doing. Doing a pretty good job staying with our wingman here. It's definitely harder to fly in formation while trying to make a commentary throughout this mission, as well as the fact that it's AI, but I think we're doing pretty good so far. Hopefully the dogfight goes pretty well. And the reason why I'm leaving the ACM down is that way I want to keep the missiles in norm mode, as well as I'm keeping the roll SAS on for now, and we'll turn that off right before we get into the actual fight itself, once we actually make the ready radio call. Now we're coming towards India a little bit.
Sniper 4 flight, let's check in with Showtime on button 1.
Alright, going over to Showtime on button 1.
Sniper check. 3. Showtime, Sniper 4 flight, checking in as ready. Sniper 4, Showtime, your pod is tracking. Proceed to
Copy.
India and
Switching to surface target.
Sniper 4 flight, check in ready. 3. Fighter's ready. Showtime copies all. Recorders on. Lights on.
Alright, we are now looking for the wild card, and we'll tell him to knock it off as soon as we see him and get visual contact with him, so that way we can avoid getting into an engagement with him and be able to concentrate on the guerrilla group that is now out in front of us. We do need to VID the guerrilla group, so we're going to be using our television camera system on the nose. And we're scanning the sky around us. Alright, looks like we got a 4-ship up here, and looks like, let's see. Yep, so we got one STT locked. It looks like he's up higher than us. Still looking around. Make sure we're moving our body to get our head around.
Target, 24 miles.
There he is. He's coming in, so we're going to go ahead and call him off. We tally the wild card. And then we're going to plug the burners. And we're going to VID these guys out in front of us, so that way we can get out in front of our lead and hopefully get a VID on these guys, so that way lead can still get off a good Fox 1 in a BVR shot, even though we have a good visual identification of these bandits. So we're going after the high guys first, making sure that they are splashed.
12 o'clock.
So we're getting spiked by a 16. We still need to get visual identification. That definitely looks like an F-16 to me.
That's a Viper.
Fox 1.
Now he's blocking us, 7 o'clock.
Come on, come on. He's up above us. This is a good shot for a Sparrow. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Alright, he's flanking now. He's trying to beam the missile. And, come on, splash. Got him.
1 mile, splash.
Alright, we just splashed the other one. And now we're looking for an F5. We're coming around. We're keeping our engines in zone 5.
7 o'clock high.
That's our F-14. Alright, and we're looking up. Alex probably like, we got one bandit there.
12 o'clock high.
Yep, Jester's on him. Let's try and get a lock on him and visually ID him, make sure we're going to attack the right guy.
12 o'clock high.
Yep. Alright, we just merged with him vertically.
6 o'clock low.
There he is. And looks like our wingman got him.
Bandit is going down.
Nice. I was probably a little bit too close for comfort for a training mission with that head-on, a vertical head-on pass, but it works for DCS World. Alright, I'm going to unload the jet and try and get some more airspeed. And I'm looking for my leader here.
All bandits down. Beautiful flying, man. I owe you a beer. Sniper 3, going back to Angel 2-3, regional over Coyote Bravo.
Alright, so we're heading to Coyote Bravo here. We're going to go ahead and get out of our TID and go back here. Looks like India's out in front of us, so we're going to go ahead and come on back. Navigation. Whoops, not tack hand. Nope. Alright, we're looking for Hammer. Where'd he go?
Roger. Switching to initial point.
Jester the AI is still excited. So we'll come on and fly back towards Gate 4, and we're going to fly east back towards Coyote Bravo. Turn our roll SAS back on. There we go. Now we've got our autopilot back. That's going to help out.
065, 11 miles. Angels 23.
065. There he is. Perfect. Got a visual on him. And we'll go ahead and lock him up here. And we'll get him on the screen.
We locked a friendly.
Yep, that's definitely an F-14, and that
Target,
is our
7
guy.
miles. You got it.
Not sure how we got so separated out from him, especially after he splashed that F5. But I'm kind of glad that he did, and that shows the importance of flying with a wingman, right? Because I think we would have been in trouble there with that vertical engagement we got into with our TF-30 engines. You guys will also notice that throughout that entire engagement, if you guys were listening to the engine sounds, or if you want to rewind and listen to the engine sounds, I was in full mill or afterburner the entire time. With the TF-30s, I'd never ever want to bring the throttles all the way back to idle. It's either full mill or zone 5, and that's why this campaign is of course named Zone 5, is because of the fact that you're going to be in Zone 5 for a long time in this mission. So he's probably going about, I want to say maybe about 330 to 350 indicated, so we're definitely going faster than him, but he looks like he's in a little bit of an orbit. His wings are forward, so he's definitely under 400 knots. So that'll help us link up with him a little bit here. And we're going to go ahead and fence out, so that way we don't accidentally shoot our friend here. And there goes the TID, is gone. We're gonna pass him. Shit. He was closer than I thought he was. Man, the ground looks really, really nice. I'm thinking as I look towards him, trying to link up with him again. Whoops. Come on, man. Just go a little faster. Alright, now we're gonna get one.
Fence out. I've completed my fence out checks. Master arm on. Fence
Oh,
out.
wow, he turned again. Jeez. Totally thought he was going to finish that left-hand turn to come back around towards Bighorn. But I guess not.
Showtime, sniper 4-point check now. Sniper 4, showtime, contact. Sniper 4-point, go at 14. Bus 14, sniper 3.
And we got plenty of fuel.
Sniper 4, Blackjack, top, you are cleared to RTB.
We have, yes, that's a friendly. Bra, 090, 30 miles. Nope, scratch that, 22 miles. Angels, 23.
And that's probably a second flight of F-14s coming out to engage with those aggressor aircraft that are out there. And it looks like I'm getting a visual on them. That'll be a little bit embarrassing to see myself trailing behind as my friends go by in the opposite direction. But, it'll make for an interesting story in the O Club, thinking that my leader was going to go left and he went right, so he zigged when I thought he was going to zag and all that good stuff.
Jack, sniper 1, flight check it, it is fragged.
Yep, so that's Sniper 1, so that is the
Sniper 1, Blackjack, radar contact, you are cleared at gate 4, your discretion. Altimeter 2930. Request to squawk mode 3 tactical. Stand by for word.
Yep, so that is definitely the other two F-14 aircrew that were plucked from the squadrons of Miramar for this interesting Top Gun evolution.
Alpha 4-3 flight at frag. All control in the clear. How copy?
Sniper 1, copy.
And zoom, there they go. Have fun, guys. And we're coming back up on lead here. And now back to the boring part of flying, which is of course flying back to Nellis Air Force Base, flying the Star back on in, and doing the overhead for runway 11 right. And on the flight back, we're going to be making mostly right-hand turns as opposed to those left-hand turns we were making. So I'm going to go ahead and slot in with the lead on his left-hand side this time. So that way I can be on the outsides of the turns instead of on the insides. That'll help us out a little bit when it comes to actually flying through these. And a little bit of wake turbulence there. Not quite as serious as the movie Top Gun makes it out to be. And the wake turbulence from a little F5 or a little A4, as shown in the movie Top Gun, is definitely not going to be large enough to heavily affect a F-14. Thank you, Jester. I think we're good to go. That means we've got about 6,000 pounds left. We've got plenty of fuel to get back home to Nellis. And we should be nice and light and be able to make a nice soft landing and keep our ground crew from having to work late into the night to keep our F-14 up because we smashed it in the ground with way too much fuel on board. In terms of navigation, let's look at our knee board and see where we're at. We're heading probably towards Elk X here. So Moose is FP, so we'll go for FP on our navigation.
Okay. Switching to fixed point.
Yes, sir. There's Moose up there. 18 nautical miles to Moose. Definitely doesn't feel nearly as comfortable flying formation on the left-hand side, because your head naturally, the way human physiology is, you naturally want to turn your head to the left-hand side rather than the right-hand side. But you still got to be equally proficient in doing both ways. The method of one aircraft in the section zooming up ahead in front to visually ID, so that way the trailer can actually get a BVR Fox 1 shot, traces its lineage back to real Top Gun exercises during the Vietnam War. And then those aviators brought that same tactic back to active combat from the Tonkin Gulf over North Vietnam and got quite a few MiG kills in that manner. Because back during the time, the very restrictive rules of engagement necessitated that Navy and Air Force pilots, and of course Marine Corps pilots, had to visually identify MiGs before they were allowed to fire. This was due to a number of factors, of course reducing the amount of fratricide that could occur with BVR missile launches, but also to ensure that those MiGs being engaged were actually North Vietnamese MiGs and not Chinese MiGs that could have drawn China into the war as they had done during the Korean War. This was one of McNamara's hugest worries about the Vietnam War and led to a lot of its rather strange policies when it came to rules of engagement, was the massive fear of dragging China into the war again, as had occurred during the Korean War. And there he goes. And it looks like we picked up some airspeed in that turn. So we're just bleeding off some airspeed, and we're going to be coasting on back towards navigational point RAM. And it looks like we're going to start a very gentle sloping descent on down into RAM as we start to get onto the star for approach back into Nellis Air Force Base. And we'll go ahead and take a look which one is RAM. RAM is waypoint 2. Keep getting on top of my leader here. Keep meaning to try to get underneath him.
You got it. Switching to steer point 2.
Yeah, definitely doing totally fine on gas. 46 nautical miles with 5,900 pounds of gas in an F-14 is totally doable. And soon we're going to have to switch over from showtime over to Nellis approach on button 6, and then scroll down through the buttons all the way until back to Nellis ground when we taxi back to our parking spot. There we go. That's a better position. That's what I've been looking for. Just takes a lot of finesse. So with this wrap-up, it looks like, from my estimation, I got 2 Fox 1 kills, and, oh no, I'm sorry, a Fox 1 kill and a Fox 2 kill, and I believe that our wingman here got 2 Fox 2 kills. Or leader. I keep saying wingman, man. Ahead of myself with the throttle. Alright, so that's the departure traffic pattern. Runway 21. Apex is priority traffic entering from Flex or Grass Peak. Fly initial to the inside runway 21 right. Initial 3500 and 300 brake west. Okay, so we're going to be flying right traffic for the brake and landing, and it looks like we'll probably being swapped over to the opposite runway.
Today you hopefully experienced some different tactical decision making based on your mission as an escort compared to the previous mission as a sweep. The escort is more important to the success or to the survival of the strike group. Hopefully, Rios are feeling more comfortable evaluating the radar picture early in the intercept, driving the fighter section, and communicating the picture to everyone, pilots, wingman, controllers. On today's mission, how did you decide which group of bandits to engage? Do you think it was the right decision? We're also looking for pilots to fly a good offensive formation during the intercept, work with the Rios for best positioning, and then that smooth transition from intercept to engagement. Once engaged, pilots need to ensure they continue to provide mutual support and to make good radio calls when necessary, such as if you become defensive.
So in terms of what Bio is telling us to evaluate, we engaged in a tactic in which we zoomed up in front of our leader to VID the bandits. We VID'd them through our television camera system, which is definitely a leg up above the old F4s, like the F4Ss that we saw take off in front of us. In terms of being able to identify those F-16s early, call that group out there was hostile, get a Fox 1 off on one of the F-16s, splash him, be able to then get a head-on shot with a Fox 2 on the other F-16 flying top cover, which are the two aircraft that are the probably the most dangerous aircraft in there, with the two F-5s down below that the F-16s were flying top cover for, were then easily gobbled up by our leader here, which I believe he probably got a Fox 1 shot on one of those F-5s and then finished off that other guy after our vertical merge with a Fox 2 shot. So I think it was a pretty darn good engagement. It was important for us to
200, 75 miles,
identify and
35.
call off the wild card early on in the fight, so that way we can turn our attention away from the wild card and be able to concentrate on the guerrilla group out in front of us and engage them well in order to keep them off of our strike flight. So I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway here, is that tactics are super, super important in terms of having a plan before you get into a situation. Oop. It's definitely hard to keep keep position in the descent here. All right, we're going to go back to Nellis control. Alright, so we're expecting the overhead for 2-1 left. So we're still going to be flying the approach to 2-1 right, braking west for a right-hand brake. Jeez, keeps adjusting his descent rate. And then we will be making the landing on 2-1 left. There is what we're looking for. Gotta stay echelon left on him for the right-hand brake. Slowing it down to about 300 indicated. A lot of this stuff is all actually quite a bit easier in real life to do all this multitasking. Flying in formation in DCS is very, very difficult, especially if you're on a flat screen, just because your depth perception is severely limited as opposed to in real life. And in DCS world, you have to look down at the controls to use your mouse to actually switch things like radio frequencies. Whereas in real life, you could simply feel for the knob to actually change the channels and look in your top right there for your UHF, for your ARC 159, and see the channels changing and just do it all by feel while still keeping your eyes on your wingman. So that's why things tend to get a little bit more complicated with multitasking in DCS World. But that's just a hamper of just being a game. And maybe one day the VR technology will be so great that you can feel the cockpit with your fingers around you, be able to find that little knob for the preset channels for the ARC 159 and be able to change it all while being able to look.
Alpha 43, radar contact. Continue inbound Nellis, expect the overhead, runway 21 left, to contact Nellis Tower at the initial.
And there's our aggressor aircraft asking for permission to land as well. And now we're well saddled up on our wingman here. So we're looking for 3,500 feet and 300 knots for the brake airspeed here. Air Force bases have more speed restrictions on them than naval bases do. This can be due to the fact that Air Force bases tend to operate larger variants of aircraft, having both airliner-type aircraft for tankers, large transport aircraft, and little fighter jets as well. Whereas naval bases have more uniform types of aircraft, being namely mostly helicopters and fighter jets, and so they can approach the airfield at higher speeds without having to worry about the mismatched speeds between lots of transport aircraft, airliner-type aircraft, and fighter jets all mixed together, like you find at Air Force bases. So we can see we're getting lined up for runway 21 right for the overhead, and we'll swap over and sidestep over to 21 left for the landing itself. And our wingman's starting to descend a little bit more rapidly here. It's flying a little bit faster than I was anticipating, but we're just going to go fully visual here. Just make sure we stay nice and saddled up. And if we get yelled at by the CO of Nellis, so be it. We'll buy him a couple beers later, and hopefully our career won't be ended. Yep, and he's turning a little bit. Oh, man. The AI can definitely be a little abrupt, but that's okay. We're doing the best we can.
Sniper 4 flight switch down. 2 switching.
Alright, this can be a little bit tricky here. We're going to button 4 and trying to stay in formation for the break.
3. Nellis Tower, Sniper 4 flight, initial for the overhead, full stop. Sniper 4, Nellis Tower, cleared for the overhead, runway 21 left.
Oh, don't get out front. Come on. Come on. There we go. And there he goes, and we're going for the second circle break on the end of the runway. About a 15-second separation here at Nellis Air Force Base, as prescribed by the approach cards. I'm going to fly it a little bit wider than we would at a Navy base or around a carrier.
Cleared to land 21 left, wind is 190 at 10. Sniper 4 cleared to land 21 left.
And we can see Sniper 4 out there in front of us. Go ahead and drop the flaps, drop the gear.
Sniper 3, a beam, gear, full stop. 20 degrees, auto. Sniper 3 cleared to land 21 left, wind is 190 at 10. Sniper 3 cleared to land 21 left.
Alright, we are clear to land 21 left.
3 down and locked.
Yep, we got 3 welded.
Full down. DLC. Engaged. Hook. Up. Harness locked. Locked. Speed brakes. Out. Brakes. Brakes checked. Accumulator pressure up. Spoiler brake selected. Fuel. Checked.
Overshot a little bit, but we'll correct back. Just be careful with those gentle corrections. Make sure you're staying coordinated with the rudder pedals in the F-14A.
500 feet.
Especially if you're behind the boat. A little bit fast for landing.
400.
Just a hair of crosswind. F-14, I tend to not really use the E-bracket quite as much as I should. A little bit too much of a descent right there. Looking for about 800 to 600. Don't want to be too harsh. Alright, that was a little bit harsh, but that's okay. And we'll hold back on the stick for a little bit of aero braking with our stabilators. And we can stop the jet pretty darn quick in the F-14, especially with that aero braking on the stabilators back there. It's a pretty big surface area to put out a lot of drag.
Sniper 3, Nellis power, clear the active via Bravo, contact ground.
And we'll pull in the speed brakes,
Sniper
put
3
on
will
the
go.
nose wheel steering, and then we'll of course bring our flaps up and start to bring our wings back as well. And we're looking for a taxiway Bravo. So as you guys can see, that was a heck of a lot of flying for, what was that, maybe 30 seconds of shooting and the exciting part of the flying, but that's what DCS World is all about. And I think that this Zone 5 campaign really brings together a lot of the fantastic parts of DCS World single player, and I think that people are really going to enjoy this campaign. And it's always nice to see content coming out for the NTTR map. I think it's definitely a very underutilized map in the community. I think it's because it's a smaller map, as well as a little bit older now, and I think that it has gotten a little bit of a boost in visual fidelity, which is nice. It was definitely needing a little bit of a facelift. Please be aware that at Nellis Air Force Base, with all of these objects,
Nellis ground, Sniper 3, clear of active on Bravo. Sniper 3, Nellis ground, taxi Bravo 2 Foxtrot. Bravo to Foxtrot, Sniper 3.
it can be a little bit taxing on your system. So I definitely recommend potentially turning your mirrors off for the start of the mission, at least, and as well as when you're taxiing back in, just to make sure you don't potentially get into any issues or may have a crash or something like that as a result of having a computer that may not have as much power as someone else's computer. There are just a lot of objects around the Nellis ramp to make it look as lifelike as possible, and that's something that I really like about Reflected Simulations World War II campaigns, is the fact that he makes everything in the air bases look so lively and full of life, which is a lot of fun and very cool to see. So we're just looking for our parking spot here. Just some Air Force guys with their beautiful, perfectly clean F-15s and my greasy, grimy F-14 taxiing by. Got some rust on it. It's pretty old, but it still does the trick. And it definitely looks a lot better than F-15. Alright, I think I can see my huffer that was used for startup up here, so we'll go ahead and taxi on up to that huffer. And we can see those two F5s that we started up next to. And we were right behind that desert camouflaged F5 there, so that's what we'll go ahead and taxi on up to. Making sure that we keep that nose wheel right on the center line. And we'll taxi right up behind this desert camo F5. And we'll taxi on right up here, right abeam at this guy in the blue shirt. And we are complete. We are back in our spot and ready to go. So at this point, we'll go ahead and shut down our F-14, turn off some of these electronic systems first before we turn off the engines, so that way we don't get into a situation where we may fry any kinds of systems or anything of that nature. Go ahead and turn off our radio. Radio is definitely the most important thing to consider when it comes to that. And we'll go ahead and shut off the engines. We'll go here, and engines coming off. Canopy going up. Alright, we'll go ahead and de-arm our ejection seat, and we'll go ahead and climb on out of our F-14 Tomcat and go on and do a debrief and then hit the O Club for a cold one. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. I think you guys are really going to like this campaign. It's a lot of fun. I've been able to play a couple missions now, and the storyline's very cool. The evolution of the missions, the progression of the mission is very cool. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it, and it really does kind of bring home the fact that, you know, it's a lot of flying and dealing with the dirty work of flying, the kind of less boring, less glamorous stuff of flying, to get to the exciting part, which lasts less than 30 seconds, and then boom, we're back to flying the down and dirty stuff to get back to the airbase, to get parked and all that. And I don't know if you guys can hear this, but this is a new audio effect that is in the F-14A, is we can actually hear the fan blades spinning in the wind. It sounds like a little metallic clinking sound, and it's next time you fire up your F-14, listen a little bit before you actually get the engines going in the F2 view, and you can hear that soft clinking. And there goes our two aggressor F-16s that we just shot down. We'll go ahead and make sure we give them a beer. We'll console them for beating them, but I'm sure they had a great flight as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, please give us a like and a subscribe. It's always appreciated. And fly safe and stay healthy out there, guys.